microphones, and if you're encouraged to ask questions at any time, you can use the chat box. And we welcome you to share your videos, especially because there aren't that many folks on the screen. So you can all feel like you're in the room together, just like we are here. So thank you all for that. Let's see. Oh gosh. Okay, so a little bit about our agenda for the meeting. We'll start off with meeting the admin team, specifically those of us that aren't going to be presenting, just so you can know everyone's faces. We'll then go into some project updates. So we've had a lot going on this past year and a half. And though we've been over COVID and we've been over Zoom, we've been able to maintain our momentum, which I hope you kind of see as we go through this presentation today. So we'll get project updates from the Ethiopia program, from the Guatemala program, from a new local project collaboration between the Guatemala and Ethiopia programs that we're terming Guatopia, and that's in a community garden nearby. And then the other local project or local collaboration that we're also doing with the professional chapter. So, and you can see from the last two that we've kind of started exploring this new world, and that's been really exciting. And I hope you also get the chance to hear about that. Also, with everything that we've been doing, we've, especially over this past year and a half, understood the importance of understanding the historical context of the communities and organizations that we're partnering with. So you'll hear a little bit about a new initiative that we're launching called the Community Context Committee. And then you'll get some finance and fundraising updates as always, and we'll leave time for questions. We'll also leave you with a documentary from our past implementation this summer at the Peace Garden. So we're very excited for everything. So starting off with meeting the admin team, everyone get ready to wave. My name is Sneha Sinha. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior studying chemical engineering, and I'm this year's president of Engineers Without Borders. Over there we have Lydia Anxious. She is our vice president, also uses she, her pronouns. We have Danielle Fonzo sitting at the same table, she, her pronouns, as our program coordinator. Rinalini is our finance officer, also uses she, her pronouns. And then we have our fundraising officer, Sidika Prabhu, she, her pronouns. Our outreach officer, May, also uses she, her pronouns. Our events coordinator, Hannah, over here with she, her pronouns. Our creative director, Cole. I never know how to say her last name, so I'm not gonna try, but he, him pronouns. And then our community context committee lead, Maya Kaparik, back there using she, her pronouns. So you'll also get to meet all of our project leads. So there are several students that are in the room that haven't introduced themselves quite yet, but that's because they'll come up here in a minute. So let's see, sorry, we're having people join over Zoom. Going into my just closing out 2020 and 2021. It's been a little bit since we've spoken with you all. So I really wanted to wrap up everything that happened this past spring after our spring reception and this summer. So first of all, we were awarded 4 Tony Diggs Excellence Awards from the university, which was extremely exciting. And I think goes to show how much we've done as a chapter through COVID. These Excellence Awards were in academics, in civic engagement, community building, and leadership education. And I think the main thread that you might hear throughout this presentation is how much has changed and how many new things we're taking on. And I think a lot of that was due to our growth that we were able to maintain over this past year and a half. So that's been very exciting, and we're really excited to be awarded those and wanted to share that with you all. As well, we have some exciting project updates. So this past year and a half, it consisted of a lot of remote work with our international partners. We had and are still having a remote implementation in Chirihuyu, which is one of our partner communities in Guatemala, and you'll hear a little bit more about that. We have a postponed implementation right now in Flakit, Ethiopia, which was an ongoing partnership, and you'll hear more about the context of that. We were able, though, to have a remote assessment this past year, so we're also considering remote work there. We had our local implementation in the Peace Garden, and that was the first really of its kind beyond our aquaponics modules, but it's very hands-on, and it was a very exciting and unique experience that I think we're trying to maintain as we move forward and grow as a chapter. And then we were also able to complete several energy audits in partnership with Beacon Interfaith, which is a housing collaborative here in Minneapolis. So a lot happened in the past year and a half that we were able to wrap up. The Beacon project, for example, was just completed yesterday. So that was really exciting news to receive. And a lot of things are changing and moving along. So this year, we have transitioned back to in-person meetings and operations, and that's us in this room together right now. But we're also navigating this whole new world with Zoom. So that's everyone on the screen right now, which is very fun and very exciting. And it's a really cool world to navigate. Within that, we've been focusing a lot on our new member recruitment, retention, and interaction. We have new first and second years on campus now. So making sure that we talk to them and engage them as best as we can. And we have, I think, around 30 new members total through both projects. That might be an underestimate, I'm not sure. But from any estimate that I can make, I think it's around that number. We also initiated a new community context committee, and I mentioned a little bit about that earlier, but this past year and a half really caused us to understand that in order to, I guess, have good quality projects, we needed good quality relationships. And that's another keystone that I hope you kind of take away from this presentation. And so the community context committee was a way of putting all of that into practice. So in understanding the historical context of those communities that we're partnering with and the organizations we're partnering with for that matter, we are able to partner with them more effectively and build a stronger relationship by taking the time to understand where they're coming from and the history behind their organizations. And so that's been a really big movement this past year and kind of came off of some cultural competency seminars that we were conducting last year because we had the time to do so. So COVID really gave us the time and space to take on that new initiative. Another new initiative is working with the professional chapter. And so again, COVID gave us time and space to navigate new partnerships and collaborations that we could take on. And one of these was the local collaboration that we're doing with the professional chapter. And you'll hear more about that later, but that is essentially working with various different organizations around the area in working on engineering projects and being equals with professionals. So it's really fascinating and really fun way to engage with a whole new group of people who are very like-minded in our goals and our values. We have continuously been developing travel plans and contingencies through all of this. So while we have this new local facet, we also are taking on all of these international projects with the same effort as we did before. And you'll hear a lot more about this later, but our goal obviously is to travel as soon as we can, but we understand that things are all up in the air. And so we've been working very hard on navigating all of these new challenges that we are facing and learning along the way. We also are taking on 4 new projects this year, which is a crazy number. And I don't know if we've ever done something like that before. So we have a new project partnership in Guatemala, a new project partnership in Ethiopia. We are continuing that Peace Garden and Community Garden involvement with a new Garden project in the Victoria Garden, which is also in St. Paul. And then we're also partnering with the Division of Indian Work through our local collaboration. So there is a lot going on with everything. And that kind of brings me to the mission statement. And the reason that I wanted to present this to you all today is because we worked hard as an admin team this year to change the mission statement in a way that we believe fits our chapter more, especially the new directions that we're going. And so I have a few things highlighted here that I'd like to walk through. One of these is the focus that we're partnering with communities locally and internationally. We realized in the past, I think it's 3 years since we partnered with Lincoln International High School, that there is a lot of work going on locally that we can get involved in, and it kind of expands the breadth and the depth of our chapter, and it also expands our abilities and our capabilities when we're working with international partners. There are a lot of lessons learned that transfer both ways, and that's been really unique to experience. The other thing that we wanted to highlight is focusing on community identified needs. A lot of our projects have always kind of held this keystone, but it's been something that we've been trying to work on harder, as well as especially as we jump into new partnerships with new communities and making sure that the needs that we're addressing with these engineering solutions are identified specifically by the community. Another component that we added was making sure that our projects are not only environmentally, not only economically, but also socially sustainable. Again, I think this is something that we've always tried to do in practice, but it's something that we wanted to ground ourselves around in our mission statement. Lastly, we wanted to acknowledge that we're students. And so that's where you see the last item bolded there, that we are continually learning, improving, and adapting. This past year has definitely taught us a lot of that. And so we wanted to make sure that that, again, is within our mission statement and within our values as a chapter that we know that we're not perfect, but we know that we are willing to grow and continually learn. And that is kind of the key driver of this past year and a half, and I hope is another one of your takeaways. So with that, if it lets me change the screen, I would like to hand it off to Ben and Christina, who are project leads from the Guatemala program, to start talking about our international projects.
Alrighty, hi everyone. My name is Ben Kroll. I'm a project lead for the Guatemala program. I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, I'm Christina Hoffman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am also a Guatemala project lead.
This is us. So just to start off with some context regarding the COVID situation in Guatemala, obviously we've been paying pretty close attention to this over the past year and a half because of how closely we work with our community partners and also how it impacts our ability to travel. So the most important statistic of these numbers up here is the municipality in which we work, which is Comalapa. 36.4% of people are vaccinated with 1 dose, which is really great. They've been ramping up rollout in Guatemala and been able to do it a lot more effectively than in the previous year. So things are really looking up. Hospitals are below capacity now, which is another really good sign. And as you can see, cases have been dropping really steadily since a pretty bad peak at the end of August. So these are all really good signs. So to give a little bit more background on the municipality that we're working with, we've been in Comalapa for 16 years. We've completed 4 projects within the municipality and impacted over 6,000 community members. So we have a really long-standing relationship with the local NGO in Comalapa. That's Long Way Home. We've been working with them for almost our duration of being in Guatemala. And they help us with all sorts of things from material sourcing to community relations. And they're a really big part of the work that we do. So as some of you may remember, the project that we started working in 2019 and continue to work on in Chirihuyu, Comalapa, is a water distribution system servicing 231 people, and it's sourced from a spring. We are implementing remotely due to COVID-19, as Neha mentioned, and I'm just going to give you a little bit more of a detailed update about how that's been going. So remote implementation has kind of come together in 2 different phases. The first phase started over the course of the summer and went from July to September. During that time period, we had a really specific schedule and very specific plans. So we had consistent communication with all of our partners that are involved in making this project come together. We had weekly calls with community leadership to actually hear about how progress was being made and if they had any questions or issues during implementation. Also daily updates from our NGO partner, specifically Roberto Perrin, who is from Long Way Home. He's been instrumental in this remote implementation process. And he just calls me during the day and asks me questions. And we do field engineering from Minnesota on a project in Guatemala, which is kind of crazy. But it's been really great to build that personal relationship with him over the course of this project and carry that through into our future projects. So in our first phase, we were able to complete pipelines and tap stand installation. We also went through the materials purchasing and delivery process, which is pretty complex to do remotely. So that was a big task. And then we also did site excavations, as you can see on the lower left, for both of our tank sites. Phase 2 is kind of a new structure that we've adapted to address some of the inefficiencies that were taking place during our first phase. In this phase, the EWB country office will have a more independent role, which allows us to more efficiently address field engineering, which is a very difficult thing to do remotely. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work as well because you have to get data here, process it, send back new designs, and we're just trying to make sure that everything keeps moving along with construction oversight from professional engineers at the office as well. So that's everything that's going on for remote implementation with this project. We are expecting to be finished in December. And now I will pass it off to Christina to talk about our next project.
Thank you. So as you guys may remember, we started a new partnership with a community called Chichicón, and it is a suburb of Comalapa with a population of about 250 people, and they speak Spanish and Katucal. And basically they have a 25-year-old existing water distribution system, and they reached out to us basically highlighting some needs that they have due to this very old system. So inconsistent water supply was one of them, and just not enough water to support the community. And we decided to partner with them because they had very good communication with us, and they're also very organized. So we decided to start assessing. This summer and this fall, we are assessing the current water distribution system, and we are able to apply a lot of the knowledge that we learned last year with remote assessment through Cheer Hear You. And one of these things is we learned that a remote topographic survey is really valuable. So we were able to do one for Cheer Hear You and decided to do one for Chichicón as well. And this has really supplemented our assessment. Also with a remote assessment, we will be looking at the water source. So you can see some springs here in this picture. So we're basically looking at how many springs there are and whether all of them are producing water and how the water quality is for these springs. We will also be looking at all of the tanks in the system. So basically looking at the structural integrity and seeing if we need to replace them or just improve upon them. We are also looking at the pipelines. So there's about 2 miles of pipelines in this community, which is a really big project for us, but we're really excited about it. There's also 5 aerial crossings, which you can see in this photo, and some of them span longer than 100 meters. So one of the things that we're looking at is to decrease costs and technical to decrease costs and technical skills. We are trying to find ways to decrease the amount of pipe bridges. So we're looking at new routing options, and we're doing this all through assessment. We are also hoping to travel this May to supplement the knowledge that we learned from remote assessment into in-person assessment. So we'll be able to actually see the site and just kind of gain all that knowledge that we might not be getting through remote assessment, and we might not know that we're not getting. And then this next year, next school year, we will be designing and implementing the system in the summer of 2023. And then after that, we will continue monitoring and evaluating the system to see if there's any more improvements that need to be made. And that's Chichicón. And we're going to pass it off to Matilde and Nate.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Nate Tordak. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering this year.
And I'm Matilde. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a sophomore in mechanical engineering.
And we are both project leads for the Ethiopia program. So we're going to quickly recap what work has gone on in the past year in our project in Falaka Garagara, Ethiopia. So we've had notes here. We had a remote assessment last fall and fall into the spring for the pipe bridge project in order to gather more data. As we assessed, we couldn't finish the design without actually getting more data. We also have the solar pump remotely installed. And that leads us to our remaining works, which that solar pump was installed, but we got data back that it only pumps up halfway than it should. So we're going to need to troubleshoot what is going wrong there. In addition, once that pump is troubleshot, we need to finish completing the system by installing the drip irrigation system so we can have the end result of improving crop yields, which is the goal of the whole solar pump and drip irrigation system. The last remaining work to be completed in Philocket is going to be the pipe bridge project. But as you see, the two starred, the troubleshooting the solar pump and the drip irrigation system, we really want to focus all of our efforts and resources on those right now and not start any additional work remotely before the work that we've already invested time and money into are actually completed. So that leads us to how we're actually going to complete these. It's been kind of tough right now. We've had a lot of communication struggles due to COVID and the ongoing political conflict that we'll talk a little bit about later. But we're planning on working with a third-party contractor at the Afro-Ethiopian Integrated Development Group, or AEID. And we're planning on working with them to complete these items when it is safe for them to go to Philocket. You can see some of the pictures. Yeah, fun.
Yeah, so as we were wrapping up the project in Philocket, we started to do a new community search last year, so spring of 2021. And these are all the different communities we were looking into, and we decided to pick a community in Tokay, Ethiopia. We were connected to this community via one of our mentors, Walter, and we decided to go with this community because we were really excited first by the relationship that we were already developing through our communication with them and via one of our mentors, Walter, and then also the project scope. We felt like it fit our students' capacity the best.
There you go. There we go. So Tokay, Ethiopia, our new project. So it has a population of about 15,000 people, which, yes, that is very large. But as Matilda will talk about a little later, there's already a system that's been put into place by actually one of our mentors, Walter, and we're going to be revitalizing the distribution system, not constructing a new system for 15,000 people. But that 15,000 is split into a couple different people groups. So there's the actual Tokay town, which is the town center, that has about 7,000 to 8,000 people as well. And then there's two surrounding kabeles, Meti and Orense, that have another 7,000 to 8,000 people. That's more of an agrarian community, and they also rely on the water distribution from Tokay as well. The language that's spoken there is Oromo. It's in the Oromia region. You can see here, it's about a 3.5-hour drive west of the capital, Addis Ababa. And we're partnering with the Barane Wangel Church Development Organization, which is the development arm of the Barane Wangel Church. They're headquartered in Addis, and they also have sort of an outreach church in the community of Tokay as well. We've been in contact with both their headquarters and the community as well, or the church in the community as well. And the CBO, the community-based organization, is the Tokay Community Water Board. They have a member from the church that is also on that water board as well, and we're able to communicate with them over Zoom, which has been really fun.
Yeah, so a little bit more about the water distribution system, which we're going to be working on. It was actually initially implemented in the 1980s by, like Nate said, Walter. And the original system had one water source starting at a spring in the outlying community. And that led to a reservoir in the center of the community, which then distributes water to a few different access points spread around the community. Because it was implemented like 30 years ago, the population has more than doubled since, and the water system can no longer provide enough water to all those people. So in 2011, the regional government attempted to fix this by adding a new water source coming from a borehole, which then pumped water to the reservoir. And then they also added a few access points around the community. This project wasn't completely successful because that new water source was reliant on a pump that was powered by electricity, and the community has a lot of electricity shortages. They're basically weekly. So that wasn't a successful implementation. So we're hoping to work on a system and revitalize it. We're currently in the assessment phase. And our three subgroups are first PMEL, which stands for Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning. And they're going to be working more on the big picture aspect of the project. So they're going to be conducting demographic surveys and kind of building a relationship with the community, really understanding what their water needs are. And then we also have water routing and water sourcing. And those two subgroups are going to be working very closely together to draft assessment plans. So that's a little bit about the system. And before we move forward, we wanted to talk about the political conflict in Ethiopia right now. So obviously we're working in an international community, which means that our projects are impacted by the challenges that those communities face. So something really big happening right now in Ethiopia is this political conflict that started in November 2020. So back in November, some elections were delayed due to COVID-19, and this prompted a political conflict between the Tigray region, which is up north of Ethiopia, and the capital, Addis. And at first, this conflict was very centralized in Tigray, so we kind of kept going with our project in Falakit. And then in spring 2021, when we started our new community search and we were looking for a new community to partner with, we decided to stay in Ethiopia and find a community that's further away from the conflict region. So we found Tokay and we decided to start the whole community application process with them over the summer. And then also over the summer in July, the Tigray forces actually started moving down into the Amhara region, which is where Falakit's located. So that also contributed to the communication struggles Nate talked about. And that's when we started to decide to put a hold on that project. However, we kept having very successful Zoom calls with our community in Tokay, and we continued communication with them and very easy communication with them. So we decided to continue the whole community application process in Tokay. And then something very exciting, over September 2021, the travel restriction in Ethiopia got moved from a level 4 to a level 3. And this was both considering COVID-19 and also the political conflict. So we were hoping to travel over May 2022 to do our assessment trip. And then
Yeah, so yesterday, November 2nd, it was reported that the Tigray forces had captured and had taken control of 2 major cities in Ethiopia that are on the road to the capital, Addis. So yeah, that was a little bit of shocking news because we were previously, travel restriction went down to a 4 to 3. We were looking forward to being able to travel. But now, so the Ethiopia Prime Minister has declared a state of emergency, and that has created now the travel ban to be reenacted. And that travel ban will be in motion for at least 6 months, which will be up until May. So May travel is not looking possible or likely at all right now. Yeah, and also just to note that kind of US's response to this. But if not by January 1st, if the conflict is not solved in a peaceful way, the U.S. will pull a large chunk or a large section of their U.S. aid out from Ethiopia as well. So as this is kind of very recent news, happened yesterday, we're still processing what this means for the Ethiopia program moving forward. But on next Tuesday's meeting, we're planning on having just a large group discussion. We're going to have everyone in the room. Just kind of talk about what's going on, talk about on ethical lines, what we should do, how we should go about addressing the situation, and how we think we should move forward as an organization or as an Ethiopia program. We are still planning on submitting the community application as is, and seeing what EWB USA will, if they're going to approve it, then we'd have to have another tough conversation. But if it does get denied, that would kind of be the end of the line there. And also just to mention, this isn't kind of totally unheard of as well. Projects like this, we're working in international projects. There are international conflicts, and that often derail projects as well. And yeah, we are not experts in world politics. We do not hold any crystal balls. So what we can do is, as a whole project team, take a step back, relax, discuss and form actionable steps, and determine what the next best path forward will be, create contingency plans, and move forward from there.
Yep, so that's our Ethiopia.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, so my name is Liam Mullen. I'm a senior studying civil engineering, and I am the project lead for the local CalLab team. So Sneha mentioned at the beginning that we've really started to rethink kind kind of the scope of our organization a little bit, and that the last couple of years we've taken on some more like local projects. And originally this was meant to kind of complement our international projects during assessment years when there was a little less work to do. So that's when we first reached out to Lincoln International High School and Urban Farm and Garden Alliance, who we still work with. But it's really come to mean a lot more than that in the last couple of years. It's a great opportunity for students to do some more site visits, hands-on work, and of course, it's great to have an impact in our local community. So I'm going to talk about local projects a little bit today. We started with LIHS and UFGA, and we've started something relatively new in the last year or two. Some of you might have recognized it as the Rebuild Team. We're now calling it local collaboration. So this is a partnership between the professional chapter and the UMN student chapter of EWB. And as I mentioned, we both had local projects prior to this. And in the wake of the George Floyd murder 2 years ago, we decided we really wanted to make our involvement in the Twin Cities more official. So we reached out to, a professional chapter and started putting our name out there a little bit more. And this is a really great group because students get to work very closely with the professionals, and it's great seeing the impact in the community. So we're partnered right now with Beacon Interfaith. We're just wrapping up that project, and we're starting a new project with Division of Indian Work, and I'm gonna talk about those in just a second. So the local call-out team can generally be divided into project work and outreach work. Project work is what you're all familiar with. It's where you're doing infrastructure projects out in the community. And then outreach work is a lot more networking and making connections with organizations. So we're not necessarily actively seeking projects. We're always looking for projects. But even if some networking doesn't result in a project, it's great to just expand our influence in the Twin Cities. And sometimes it's not getting EWB connected with an organization, it's getting the organizations connected with each other. So that's really what we've kind of been doing the last 2 years. So I mentioned before, we're partnered with Beacon Interfaith. Beacon Interfaith is an organization that advocates for affordable housing in the Twin Cities. In addition to advocacy for policy, they also own a number of properties that they rent out in what they call a supportive housing model. So they include resources for tenants right at the property. So we completed a series of energy assessments and tax recommendations for Beacon Interfaith. We're also partnered with Interchange, which is another organization that does these types of energy audits for groups in the Twin Cities. So this project, we're just wrapping up. We had 3 rounds of deliverables. The first deliverable has been turned over to Beacon, and the other 2 are done, and they're in a QA/QC process. That's like quality control. Quality control with the national EWB organization. So we've been very fortunate to work with Beacon, and we're really proud to have this project be wrapping up as the first official local call-out project. So I mentioned also we're working with Division of Indian Work, and this is a project that's just getting started up. Division of Indian Work provides resources and support for the American Indian population in the Twin Cities. They do tremendous work in many areas, and this is their headquarter building, which is on Lake Street. And we have a couple of projects we're going to do for some site improvements at that site. So they have an existing solar array that they'd like us to do an assessment of. And then we're also looking at possibly implementing compost and rainwater catchment for their gardens in the backyard. So we're very excited about the local call-out group, again, to get more influence, more work in the local community, and then really have that opportunity to work closely with the professional chapter. So with that, I'm going to welcome back Matilde and Christina to talk about another local project.
Okay, yeah, so as Liam mentioned, last year we started working with UFGA, the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance, in a community garden, the Peace Garden. So we'll talk a little bit more about that now. So UFGA is a, did I skip a slide? Yes, I did. I was like, what? So UFGA is a network of 10 community gardens in the St. Paul city, promoting social and environmental justice through gardening and farming and community building. So last year we worked at the Peace Garden, and our main project components there were a greenhouse, permeable pavers, rainwater catchment, garden boxes, solar lighting, and then also education components. So the Peace Garden is UFGA's children's garden. So they do a lot of children initiatives in the garden, and they have a lot of events for children to promote gardening. And so with all of our project components, we added an education component so that we could promote STEM learning via the Peace Garden. So we wrapped up this project over the summer, in just this summer actually. So there's some pictures of our project, and then like Sneha mentioned, we're also going to be showing a video of the whole implementation process at the end of the presentation. So now moving into this year.
So yeah, we decided to continue our partnership with UFGA, and we're moving to a different garden within that organization. And this garden is actually a community box garden. So it works a little bit differently. So different community members are able to use different garden boxes, and they have more flexibility about what they can plant and how they want to use that garden box. So that's really exciting that we're going on a new avenue with that. And we are also working together with both the Ethiopia program and the Guatemala program. So this is really a great chance for all of us to unite under a single project. Some of the project components that we decided through lots of communication with the community gardeners and the community members, one of them is composting. The community made some recommendations on having composting be more available, and also an easier process of turning the composting, because apparently it's a lot of work. And we'll also be looking at the landscaping and accessibility. So we'll be looking at beautifying the garden a little bit more, and then also improving the safety of the garden. Just because right now it's like a little bit uneven some places when you walk, and safety is our top priority. So we want to improve upon that a little bit. And we also identified water distribution as a need. A lot of the gardeners were talking about how it's hard to water their gardens because there's a tap stand at one spot, and if you're away from that tap stand, it's a little bit of a walk to get to your garden, especially with a big heavy bucket of water. So we decided to look at different options for that. And we'll also be looking at some seating and lighting. There was some interest in having the garden be more a community space. So we will be looking into seating, and we will also be looking into lighting so that gardeners are able, and community members are able to stay there a little bit past dark, because it gets very dark, as we've been seeing in the fall and in the spring as well. And then to help supplement these subgroups, we also have a CAD subgroup, which will help us model these designs and create visualizations of these different components. So the timeline for this project is we did some assessment over the summer and are continuing assessment and alternatives analysis this fall. These pictures you can see are from our assessment trip 15 minutes away to the Victoria Garden. And it was really exciting to be able to go to the garden with all the subgroups, both the Ethiopia subgroups and the Guatemala subgroups, and really collaborate on all these different components in the garden. And through this, we are able to gather all that data and come up with alternatives, which we will then present to the community and see what they would think would best fit their needs, and go forward with the design of those best alternatives. So we'll be designing this spring and then implementing this spring and this summer. And something really cool about this project is the people who design these different components of the garden are able to implement it. So they're able to see the whole project process and really get to see their ideas come to life. So we really love this about the project. Yep.
That's all. I'm gonna hand it over to Maya now.
Hello, I am Maya Parik, a junior in mechanical engineering and environmental geography, she, her pronouns, and I am the lead for the Community Context Committee this year. This is a new initiative that we are starting to improve our projects through a deeper understanding of our partner communities and then their history and how they operate within their own context that they live in. The kind of how we break that understanding down into these different C's of community, context, and committee starts with the communities that we serve and who makes those up. So whether that is on a global or a local scale or right within our EWB or UMN community, that is a group of people that we are serving in a different way based on the context in which they live. The micro communities that make those up are any racial, ethnic, religious minorities, people of LGBTQ identities, women, or other smaller groups that are included in each of those larger communities. The context that we are kind of concerned with on an umbrella level is the history of these communities, the social or cultural norms that they live with, the politics that they kind of ascribe to, whether that is a structure, whether that's a party, etc., and then the economic system in which they operate. And in terms of who is part of the committee, all are welcome. Every student across any of our chapters, whether that's local, international, or other, are involved in this, and we are kind of determining how mentors and other people will be included in the future. The overall objectives that we are hoping to complete both this semester, this year, and then going forward as the group evolves, is on the broadest level to understand each of those four contexts for each of the communities internationally and locally that we work with, and then compile resources on those to reference later and to have a distinct database where we can have that information stored. Then developing skills for socio-technical assessments is talking about how do we use our assessments as a way to understand both the technical elements of a project as well as the social, cultural, historical, political, economics factors that go into those. So asking questions that are more inclusive and that are kind of aimed at a wider audience to get as much information as we can and understand how the project will impact the lifestyle of that community to a deeper extent. And then on kind of a slightly different track, but just a thing that we want to keep in mind is understanding how the language that we use to represent ourselves and the communities we work with, how that language has, what connotation it has, and how it impacts how our projects are viewed, and then how we actually interact with those people. So diving deeper into what language we are using and how we are using it effectively in order to learn better communication. So that is our new initiative based on a variety of actions that we have taken throughout the past couple semesters, and we look forward to seeing how that evolves and grows over time. Thank you. Next up, we have finance and fundraising.
Hi, everybody on Zoom. Okay, cool. So hi, everybody. Again, I'm Sadika Prabhu. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm this year's fundraising officer.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rinaldi Ayer. I also use she, her pronouns, and I'm a sophomore this year majoring in chemistry with a minor in computer science, and I am this year's finance officer.
Cool. So starting off with a little bit of a fundraising summary from this last year. It was a very successful year. We were able to fund for all of our projects. One notable point being Give to the Max Day last year, which was super duper successful. We blew past our goal along with the help of awesome donors, the Tweetons, who helped us with a $2,000 match. And then we were also awarded the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Agri Grant and the Small District Rotary Grant this last year, which was well used by our projects, which Rinaldi will get a little bit into now. I'm just kidding. Now.
So for a quick fundraising summary, for Guatemala, the majority of our funding came from the Rotary District Small Grant. It in fact helped cover around half the project cost. And the remainder was met with the cost share that's given by EWB USA. And as a surprise for this year, there is an anonymous donor who gave an additional 25% funding towards the project, which was very exciting for us. For Ethiopia, there was no funding this year due to the ongoing political conflict. Second to last, for Lincoln International High School project with the aquaponics system, the majority of that funding came from the Boston Scientific grant for the wrap up. And last, for the UFGA Peace Garden implementation, the majority of that funding came from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture grant, and the remainder was made up with the rest of those grants. So in terms of expense breakdown, since for the fall and the summer for this year, for Guatemala, we spent around $23,000 for the implementation in Chirihuyu. In Ethiopia, there was no expenses due to the conflict. UFGA was around $15,000 and LAHS was around $1,400. And then we had some remaining miscellaneous costs to cover our 3 recruiting events, camping, and other events like for the Victoria Garden.
Yeah. So we've got 2 big graphs to show y'all for some of our projected expenses. So right here, you can see our expenses coming up for our Guatemala and Ethiopia programs, as well as the Victoria Garden project. Local Collab doesn't have any expenses to worry about for this year, so that's why they're not on this chart. But yeah, as you can see, a lot of what's going to be factored in will be travel for this upcoming year, and then second most will be the surveying that we're going to do to make sure that we fully and properly assessed our projects. Up next, we have a graph kind of describing our fundraising goal for this upcoming year. What we've already allocated is around $11,000, and we're looking to raise $40,000 more for a grand total of $51,000-ish for our project costs this upcoming year. One of the ways that we'll be doing that was with Give to the Max Day, which is coming up on November 18th. There's a link for donations. It'll be live the week of, and there'll be more promo content coming out about that later. Now we'll be handing it off to Danny.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danny Alfonso. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering this year. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm this year's project coordinator. My main role as project coordinator is like mentoring PLs and getting them all in one room, but also I'm in charge of something we call the CivE space. CivE space is short for the room in the 6th floor of the civil engineering building that EWB is currently occupying. And we're pretty excited about this space. Now, why are we so excited about a room? Well, previously, if we wanted to prototype or build anything, we had to coordinate with anyone else on campus, and then we wouldn't have a place to store our prototypes. We also didn't have access to our tools as easily as we do now. We had to coordinate first with someone for a key, and then we had to have that key for 24 hours, get all our stuff out of the room, and then return the key. But also we didn't have access to that building on the weekends. So like, it was a mess. We have a study lounge, but it was only accessible to admin of EWB, and we hadn't previously had a nap corner. So now we can all have all that stuff in one room in the CivE space. So we're really excited about it. And that is where we also store our tools. Shout out to Mike Hoyer and Brown Intertech for spearheading this tool drive that got us all these tools for traveling. You can see like there are kind of like buckets that we would travel with to Guatemala and Ethiopia when we could travel. And they were super useful. They held long battery life, and we had plenty of them to complete the projects while we were in country. But now that we are working in local projects, we are hoping to find a different set of tools, or hoping to buy a different set of tools. So what does that look like? Well, shovels. For one, we can't travel with shovels, and so we didn't have any when we were in the local projects. We are hoping to buy miter saw and miter saw stand and sawhorses, and that we borrowed Jeff Stewart, who I think is here. Hi, Jeff. Which couldn't. So without your tools, we couldn't have finished the greenhouse at UFGA specifically. And we also are hoping to buy a ladder. We actually have a whole list of local project tools we are hoping to buy. So If you're hoping to donate to EWB for something specific, reach out to me and I can get you the list. I also would like to point out that this list and the fundraising for these tools is not included in Give to the Next Day or any of the project totals. So yeah, I think that's it for the Civ space and the tool drive. Now we are opening it up for questions.
All right, thank you everyone so much for presenting and for listening. Like Danny said, we're going to open up for questions, but one thing I did want to also drive home is that this past year, we really learned what the quality of travel or what travel can do. Having the experience of traveling and working on projects in that way, and then working on projects completely remotely were very different experiences as a group. And so this past year and a half was a way for us to realize the importance of travel and building those relationships with our community partners, and as well as actually physically implementing our projects and making a successful project. So that was one thing that I wanted to, I guess, drive home given our presentation as well. So with that, we are open for questions, and also on the bottom of the screen here, you can see our date for spring reception, which we're hoping to have in April. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. But we're also welcoming questions over Zoom. If you're interested in asking any, we'll recite them and relay them here, any questions asked. So yeah, if admin wants to come on the stage as well. Might as well. You spoke.
Are you getting the number of student volunteers to the organization that you desire, or has it been challenging?
Oh, that's a good question. So the question was, are we getting the number of student volunteers that we're kind of looking for our organization, or has that been challenging? Do any project leads
Sure.
want to take it?
Close.
Yeah.
We have been getting pretty decent numbers. Of course, our first priority is having enough people to do the amount of work that we have. And we've never had any issues with that. I know for the Guatemala program, we're consistently sitting around 40 to 50 students. I think Ethiopia is similar, and local collaboration is a little bit different. I'm not sure what your numbers are.
Yeah, no, we're definitely on the smaller side, but we also have, a lot of volunteers from the professional
Right.
sector. So.
Yeah.
Also pitch in that as outreach officer, because at an event, is also very popular. Has been involved so much on campus. And when we talk about projects, for teachers and a lot of students, so a lot of freshmen come through the market.
Jeff.
So how worried are you about?
So the question is, how worried are we about Ethiopia and going there?
Do you know the mic, or can you hear us? Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
How worried are we? Well, I would say very worried. I mean, we had a pretty lengthy discussion yesterday. After meeting, we went to Wally's and had comfort food and talked about what the heck do we do? How do we move forward from this? And kind of what we don't want to do is create hypothetical situations and say, well, if this goes away in a month from now, or if this goes away 2 months from now, or, this could happen a year from now. So we don't want to make up any numbers because we don't know what's going to happen. But what we are going to do is just create contingency plans for if we are able to do remote work. We're going to have a contingency plan on how we're going to successfully execute that. If we're able to travel, we're going to have a contingency plan and plan on how we're going to do that. And if, the community application doesn't get accepted and we are not able to continue the Ethiopia program in Toke, we're going to have a contingency plan for that as well. So unfortunately, I don't know if I can answer your question directly, but Yeah, we are worried. It's a really difficult situation because we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we found all this out yesterday. We actually yesterday, I had texted one of our community contacts. Yes, I was like, hey, how's it going? How's the community application coming along? And then like 5 hours later, we hear the news. So we're really just taking it one day, 1 week at a time and doing our best to be transparent with our team and with our community and with our NGO, and just working together to figure out the best path forward, because there isn't really a right answer right now. So, yeah, worried. Thank you.
Yes.
So do you find there's English spoken among people in the country, or do you have to live it yourself to be able to deal with the language barrier yourself?
Okay, so the question was, do we find that there are often English speakers in country and the international partnerships that we have, or do we have to rely on translators pretty heavily?
Go first. Yeah. So for our project partnership with Falakit, we used a translator on all of our community calls to do that. In the community as well, there were a couple people that spoke both English and Amharic that we were able to use as translators. But for the project in Tokyo, when we've been having calls every 3 weeks with both the executive director at BWCDO, the NGO, and then also the Tokyo Water Board, and all the representatives from those have been able to speak English and Oromo as well. So we don't need a translator for these calls right now.
Yeah, but actually, I know one of our recent Zoom calls, our mentor Walter joined us, and it was really cool. He started speaking in Amharic with our community partners. So we also have a mentor who can speak Amharic, but we've been really lucky to be able to speak with our NGO and community partners in English.
Yeah, and then for Guatemala, we speak directly to our NGO partners in English most of the time when Roberto calls me, unless he forgets a word, which I speak. I'm minoring in Spanish, so I speak a decent amount of Spanish, but English is often easier just for our whole team. And then the community leadership themselves, they speak Spanish and Kachikal, which is an indigenous language in that region of Guatemala. And sometimes we communicate directly, but mostly we just use Roberto as a translator because that's a pretty efficient way to do it.
Very experienced.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, we'll let the folks on Zoom go. And we're going to actually show a video from our Peace Garden implementation. So we'll send that along to you all. We were having some technical difficulties earlier with sharing audio, so we're not going to try doing that, but we will send you the video over Zoom in case you're interested in watching. And then we will show it right here for everyone in the room right now. It's a little bit of a lengthy one, so buckle in, but I enjoyed it. Might be biased, but that's okay. So yeah, you guys want to take a seat? Show the video. But thank you all so much for joining us over Zoom. Much appreciated.